I have been running this platform, Iftinka Aqliga, for almost a year now. And up to this point, I don't think I have properly introduced myself. And why is that? I was simply too scared to do so. Even identifying the I and me here was too scary. So, what was I afraid of? I was afraid of myself, my own story, my family, Muslims, and even ex-Muslims. I use an alias in Antawaq. That is not my real name, of course. My alias is used to conceal my identity. And if you're curious about what it means, Inanta means daughter, and Waq means God in Somali. Waq being the Kusharik deity Somalis worshipped once upon a time. I am a Somali woman. I chose this name on a whim, probably because I found it symbolic to take on something my ancestors deified. Whether my ancestors themselves are anything to follow is a topic for another discussion. But really, I chose an alias because I'm not ready, if ever, to divulge my real name or self. Some of you may already know who I am, have seen my face, and can understand why I chose to conceal my real identity on this platform. To those who have no understanding of my need for anonymity, you can piss right off. I have my reasons for concealing my true identity. However, because I choose to do so, my work might come off disjointed. Understandably, that comes with the territory of hiding your identity. Some things will get lost in translation because you won't understand where certain perspectives are coming from. I am hiding myself in my work, and that oftentimes can come across as jumbled and inconsistent. Bear with it, and hopefully you will hear the why in there somewhere. I am straightening out my writing voice in the meantime, and that should clear up some of the confusion going forward. For now, I will embrace some of the inconsistencies and disconnect stemming from concealing my identity. And if you care to come along, feel free to take my online persona as it is. For what it's worth, I think some of the backstories that I am comfortable with sharing for now will help elucidate why I do this work, where my perspective is coming from, and what this work means for me. You're a coward for hiding your identity. To those who are repulsed by my decision as an ex-Muslim and the decision of many other ex-Muslims to hide their identity and be careful and conceal their identity, we have all chosen not to be martyrs for Islam. If other ex-Muslims have taught me anything, is that deconstructing and criticizing Islam is a dangerous endeavor. And so one way to juxtapose that from the Islamic perspective and to show how Islamic indoctrination plays for people, both for Muslims and ex-Muslims or anybody who's been impacted by the Islamic system. One piece of the Islamic indoctrination plays into this rush of tempting ex-Muslims to divulge their identity so they could be martyred. And where is that coming from? This is bait. And I am not falling for it, and many other ex-Muslims have also decided not to fall for it because it is bait, and it's coming from the Islamic indoctrination. Islam makes people very weary about the environment and context and situations that they're in. Islam also makes people very egotistical and arrogant, and it hijacks the part of the brain that is involved with good decision making. And there's a lot of factors that people have to take into consideration when making a decision. So Islam anybody who's impacted by Islamic indoctrination, short-charges the ability to take measured risks. It retards people's ability to weigh options, understand when to apply pressure, when to scale back, and the optics of their behavior. Considering that approach, it shows a lack of all sense of balance and measurement and the sensing of danger. And when they choose to go all in on either somebody confronting Islam fully, or for Muslims baiting people to divulge their identity, this is coming from the mentality of Islamic martyrdom, martyring oneself. And so that's a big piece of the Islamic indoctrination of martyrdom. Splay yourself out to be judged, harassed, stalked, and just to put one's life in danger. It's a bait. And there have been a lot of people who fell for it. A lot of Muslims who, put that card on the table of asking, tempting people to divulge their identity. And for anyone who can be egotistical or arrogant or is not able to see what's being played out in front of them, will fall for the bait and expose themselves only to be harassed and stalked and their lives impacted. And we've seen that, for many, people who have criticized Islam either as Muslims, either as ex-Muslims, either as non-Muslims who've, criticized this religion, they are going to be the ones that are going to be attacked. And so, Islam is a beast and it's a monster and it has a lot of minions who work on its behalf. And so, understanding the operations of the world and how to handle something as dangerous as Islam and criticizing it and deconstructing it, it has to be done in a slow, methodical, way. Because there is an ego backlash, and imagine getting a collective ego backlash from millions of Muslims. And so what can be said of taking actions and coming across the beast of Islam and expecting no repercussions for their actions and then making oneself a martyr for all of that? Martyrdom is essential to Islam. Whether you're a Muslim or whether you are an ex-Muslim, the martyrdom complex, that side of the Islamic indoctrination, impacts people and it shows up differently, right? It shows up differently. And so has anyone deconstructed the martyrdom complex for them from Islamic indoctrination? For most people, no, they haven't. So going off of that impulsivity and irrational behavior and not having foresight about how one's behavior is going to come back at them from others and the environment that they're in, it's being naive and foolish. It's a lack of understanding of the operations of the world and an awareness of human behavior and a blind approach to the resultant ego backlash that they will eventually get, that Islam has destroyed for many people, that sense of measuring their decisions and their actions against consequences. It obliterates that. Islam is an all or nothing, easy answers, just do this and there you go construct. For some Muslims and ex-Muslims alike, Islam obliterates their ability to make wise decisions entirely. So they go all in. And so just as some terrorists who are Muslims can launch their death wish by martyring themselves via a suicide bombing, so too are ex-Muslims and non-Muslims or never Muslims who haven't deconstructed Islam, doing a similar thing, exposing them freely online, exposing themselves freely online with their critique. So my question here to the question of you're a coward because you're hiding your identity. What is the rush? If the information is available to criticize and deconstruct Islam, the identity behind that of what is the rush? The information is available. And that rush is that impulsivity and irrationality that's coming from people who are impacted by Islamic indoctrination and that martyrdom, that martyrdom that they have, that they see the world as black and white, martyr yourself, go all in, have no sense of rationality, jump all in, forget consequences, forget tomorrow. That's an Islamic construct. I mean, of course, you can see it play out in many different societies, and this is not just exclusively an Islamic thing, but Islam definitely promotes the martyrdom way of life. You can see that even from Islamic history, the way that Khadija lived her life out. That's an example of Islamic martyrdom, martyring herself and giving up everything without looking back. And where did she end up? Use Khadija's example to show the martyrdom in action. It doesn't have to just be the ways that we see it in just the current world, but it has a smaller scale. But regardless if it's a large scale or a smaller scale, it's still sacrificing oneself for and having no ways of weighing that out. So, this is anyone who is cavalier about how they choose to go about criticizing Islam and thinking that they can say whatever they want, however they want, and also showing their face and name in the process. They're painfully still stuck in their Islamic ways because they're not applying any sense of measurement here. That is a prime example of Islamic indoctrination in action. Islam taught them to be martyrs of themselves, to make martyrs of themselves, splay themselves up to be judged, harassed, stalked, limiting their opportunities and burning themselves out in the process. So, I see the way that some ex-Muslims and, non-Muslims have sacrificed themselves for their work only to not even have a life to live in order for their work to come to fruition. For me, my goal is to deconstruct it for myself and bring along for the ride anyone who's interested in that process. It is not meant to offend, but if someone is offended, they will be offended. In that way, still, I have to tread carefully and understand that people have motivations for harming others. I have to continuously bargain with myself how far I'm willing to deconstruct Islam before dangerous people start to take action. But essentially, what good would it do me to criticize Islam if I'm not alive, healthy, and vibrant enough to tell my story? That's the bargaining and grappling with the hard work and making wise decisions, being careful and pragmatic. Measured, cool, slow, calculated, methodical. Easy does it, there is no rush. So therefore, going back to the original question of, why I choose to conceal my identity, I have my reasons for concealing my identity. I'm going at my own pace and choosing what to divulge about myself. And I can make retractions and pull content as I see fit, and I can be politically correct if I have to, especially considering the aftermath of the Israel-Hamas war. Still, there is danger, and still, it's again grappling with the decision-making and grappling with the environment and understanding the context of the information that we're discussing when we're criticizing Islam. So why iftinka aqliga? Before I can answer that question, I have to answer another one first. There remains the open question about why I left Islam. And as many reasons as there are, I will discuss my journey and motivations for leaving Islam throughout my future videos and articles, slowly and methodically. And that is to drive home the point that there are many reasons, and each reason contributes differently to how I choose to address each topic. This is essentially the biggest piece I'm working out and plan to address it holistically for my content creation to flow naturally. This is that weaving in strategy that I'm going for. What I can say for now is that Islam held a big part of my life, even as an ex-Muslim. There's a running joke within Muslim circles about ex-Muslims being obsessed with a religion we've turned our backs on, and there's some truth to that. and I will address why ex-Muslims are obsessed with Islam in the future, and it's not as funny as Muslims make it out to be. My creation of 15 Aqliga stemmed from the reasons I had for leaving Islam. It offered me the chance to go backward into my life and work my way forward. It showed certain patterns in my life, certain behaviors of mine that were baffling to me as to why they kept occurring. As I was writing more and more articles on Iftinka Aqliga and holding talks and making videos, more of my own life started to gain new color and come into focus. Hindsight is 20/20, and sometimes you have to work backwards to move forward. And here's why. A little backstory on me. When I first left Islam back in 2016, I never clearly worked out my reasoning behind it and how it was and still is affecting me years after. Originally, it started as a rebellious thing to do, shirk off Islam and enjoy my plentiful freedom. I was a 20-something-year-old woman going through a difficult phase in my life, removing the shackles of repression and taking off my hijab. My first taste of freedom came the summer after I took off my hijab. I was speeding down an open highway, blasting Rascal Flatts in my car with the windows down, and felt, for the first time in my life, the hot summer air on my neck and my hair running wild in the summer heat, unobstructed by a hijab around my face, head, and neck. Blessed be the country of freedom that I was born in and live in, because daily I continue to enjoy the fruits of my freedoms as an ex-Muslim Somali black woman. But you don't get away from a religion you were raised in for decades just like that. It's not about just removing the hijab, listening to music, traveling freely, shaking hands with men, and just being independent. It's not about being a woman with a career, education, and access to money. These are hard fought for rights in any Western country, and if you live here, it's not hard to adapt to that freedom by your lifestyle choices. You can still do all of those things in a Western country and more as a non-practicing cultural Muslim. You don't have to be an ex-Muslim to do that. That is not what being an ex-Muslim is about for me. Far from it. What I realized is that for me, Islamic indoctrination was a deviously indiscriminate authority in my mind. And until I unlearned and deconstructed the multitude of limiting beliefs and harmful viewpoints I was raised to uphold my whole life, it would not loosen its vice grip on me. The lesson for me here and why I chose to start Iftinka Aqliga is that if I had not worked out how Islam affected me, both when I was a Muslim and after leaving it, it would remain its destructive influence in my life. I feel the need to do this from many points of view, not just my own, but also the viewpoints of many people within Islam and without it. For this reason, Iftinka Aqliga serves as a way for me to go through Islamic indoctrination and socialization with a fine-tooth comb, smooth out the kinks, and straighten out the lines. If I hadn't faced the Islamic demons in my life would have turned into a mangled and gnarly mess. So some questions that people have. To those who think, why don't ex-Muslims just shut up about Islam and move on with their lives? If we don't, the Islamic indoctrination will eat us alive. This is my way of straightening out the hell Islam wreaked on my life. It is my accountability to myself. I owe myself that much. Not every ex-Muslim or Muslim had a negative experience with Islam. So, if you're a questioning Muslim, don't take this as permission to discount the experiences of those who have a rosy image of Islam and still chose to leave it. Inversely, there are those Muslims who stay in Islam despite its ruinous effect on them. We all have free will, so use it as you please. So why can't I just resolve all of my demons from Islam on my own? Why don't I just go to therapy, bitch at my therapist? Well, I do go to therapy and have ever since I left Islam. That was the primary reason I went to therapy in the first place. I've worked in the mental health field myself under many capacities, wearing many hats. I also studied mental health and therapy in college. I've worked in the field, both in the medical sense and the mental health field, as a practitioner, providing essential medical and mental health services to patients suffering from a multitude of different conditions. I've also studied counseling theories, behavioral sciences, mental health disorders, religious trauma syndrome, substance abuse and addiction sciences, social deviance and psychopathology, all of this both independently and in college. I've worked in the delivery of mental health and medical services, and I have also been a recipient. All of this spanning over a decade of experience, research, interacting with patients and professionals from many different disciplines in many communities, including Muslim communities. What I learned from my years of therapy, which had an immensely helpful impact on my life, and also why I can be articulate about my thoughts on Islam, is that Western taught therapists have some understanding of Islamic indoctrination, but they are severely lacking in most areas in that regard. Western taught therapists who have not been raised under Islamic teachings can understand it theoretically, but they can't understand the social, familial, and gender-based implications that come with it. They don't understand where it drives certain decision-making, why it complicates certain mental disorders, why people return to Islam, and some therapists will outright encourage them to do so, why it impacts daily living, and how it can even act on medication compliance. They don't get any of that. You have to teach them and get them up to speed on all of these things. I know, because I've worked in the field as a practitioner myself. Why do I have to involve the internet? Iftinka Aqliga is my healing journey, along with many other ways that I am recovering from Islamic indoctrination and socialization. This is only one facet of my healing journey. But by writing articles, making videos, holding talks, and dissecting Islamic indoctrination and socialization under many lenses, it serves as a commitment to my own healing and self-improvement. That is my way of working out Islam's impact on my life. Having the opportunity to exercise my freedom of expression online by writing articles and making videos and dissecting Islamic indoctrination in what little way I can is far more healing than many other ways I could go about this endeavor. But this is only one facet. Despite how dangerous this work can be, it serves as a testament to my growth out of what truly was a dark place that Islamic indoctrination and socialization had in my life. I would love to leave the Islamic indoctrination and socialization fully behind me one day, but like any person who has blind spots, that will only come with enough time, effort, dedication, and experience as I unlearn everything about this treacherous religion. One caveat and note to this is, how do people perceive my work? The way I view Islam and how it impacted my life has no bearing on yours if you are a Muslim or even an ex-Muslim. Take from my work what applies to you, as I'm sure my work resonates with people from different walks of life, both Muslims and non-Muslims and ex-Muslims. and to some it won't. Your view of Islam is your own, and mine is mine. If you take offense to my way of dissecting Islam, the insights I gain by looking at it from a multidisciplinary viewpoint and characterizing Islam in a way that doesn't fit your worldview or your view of Islam, that is your business. My work should have no bearing on your appreciation of Islam or lack thereof. And if it does, then maybe you should dissect why that is. If someone criticizing your religion because of how it impacted them, a separate individual from you and your life, and that offends you, it is your responsibility to sort that out. For Muslims who are truly satisfied with their faith and belief in Islam, my work has no bearing on their lives. In fact, most likely, it won't even show up on their feed because their algorithm detects no interest between my work and them. So that would leave out the offended. Here's a scenario for the offended. What brought you to ex-Muslim content and spaces? Obviously, you are not satisfied with Islam, or your local sheikh and or favorite YouTube dawah bro is not answering some pressing questions you have about Islam, or your moral compass is compromised by Islam in some way, and that doesn't sit right with you. So you saunter your way into ex-Muslim spaces, hoping that they would reflect back to you some of the problems of Islam that you can easily and comfortably discount since they never apply to you anyway. And therefore, you're looking to prove to yourself why Islam is the right religion. If an ex-Muslim is wrong about something, then Islam is right about everything. You scoff and say to yourself, these stupid ex-Muslims, they're so lost, they're wrong about Islam. Islam is the right religion. I'm just here to strengthen my faith by viewing ex-Muslim content. Right. But some of what you hear and read actually might apply to you, and you briefly notice it in your own life. And when you notice the cognitive dissonance, you receive an ego backlash. And you can't handle that, because that would begin seeding some deconstruction in your ego about your whole life and the central Islamic point, and you will begin seeing those issues in many areas of your life. So now you're triggered. And in order to pacify the ego backlash, well, you get it out by acting out your Islamic indoctrination and socialization to bring yourself back into the fold of Islam. Because more than anything, Islam comforts people, provides them easy answers about the world, consoles them about their questions with Allah knows best, and pacifies them with the promise of Jannah, a Jannah they can't have in this world, but have to wait until they're dead to find out. And the odds are that most likely, under the Islamic construct, most Muslims are going to hell, because of their doubts and their sins and every wrong they've committed in their life. It's more likely under the Islamic construct for most Muslims to end up in hell. There's enough hadiths and ayahs to back that up. You can just make one mistake or have a moment of shirk that can be brought on by someone viewing an ex-Muslim video and having doubts come up for them. And doubt is shirk, and shirk is kufr. That's just one line of thinking. But the ego backlash will eventually take people back to what is comfortable so they can leave a quick comment and wash their hands clean of it all. Commanding good and forbidding evil? You commanded yourself to do good by leaving a comment and forbid yourself of the evil of doubt. And there, you have just fulfilled your duty as a Muslim. If you are satisfied with Islam, you would not be here. This is your way of possibly working out your problems with Islam. I'm just pointing out at one example of how Islamic indoctrination and socialization is guiding your behavior and your actions. Maybe it doesn't apply to you, and you can just leave that as it is.